Always being thankful is a common lesson our mothers advise us, and I've always found that particularly good advice from my mum, especially if you're going through difficult times. It turns your focus on others who are not so advantaged as yourself. And we've been doing a lot of that lately, I'm sure. So many Australians are hurting right now. Lives turned upside down, painful separation from their loved ones, livelihoods that they've spent a lifetime building stripped away, uncertainty about their futures and their family's future. The last few months have given us a reminder of the things that are really important: our health, our well-being, a strong health system and all those who keep it strong, a growing economy, our jobs and our incomes that rely on it. Cannot take this for granted. Every job matters, whatever job you do. Every job is essential. Our children's education, caring for our elderly, respecting their dignity, the selfless and humble service of so many Australians who just get on with it every day, make this great country work. We have seen these heroes in action. Above all, the importance of each other, that every Australian matters, every life, every job, every future. And we've learnt some important lessons, that we can meet the tests as we have and the challenges that we've so far confronted, that when we have to, we can and we do pull together, that we can focus on something bigger than just ourselves. Be encouraged, Australia, that we are successfully making our way through this difficult battle on two fronts. And we're certainly doing it better than many and most around the world today. Firstly, we've been fighting the virus and we are winning. Secondly, we have put in place and are delivering the economic lifeline through JobKeeper and JobSeeker and many other programs to get us through the worst of this, to buy Australians time as we fight the virus and we chart our way back. Thirdly, and particularly today, we move ahead with reopening our economy and our society with a clear plan and a clear framework that shows Australians the road ahead. The next step beyond this will be to build the confidence and momentum that will see our economy get back up and running and get Australians back up on their feet and moving ahead with confidence. And then we can reset our economy for growth in the years ahead, in this new environment, so we can deliver the jobs, guarantee the essential services that Australians rely on, keep Australians safe, and take care of this amazing country that we have the great responsibility of looking after. This is the plan we are working through to get through this together, as we promised. So today our focus is on the road back. Today, we have put in Australia in a position to go forward. We have strengthened our health system and put the protections in place. On the front line, our testing and our tracing capabilities containing outbreaks, all backed up by a health system with more ICU beds and ventilators, more personal protective equipment, doctors, nurses, first responders ready to go, JobKeeper and JobSeeker in place. So with that work being done, today National Cabinet agreed a three-step plan and a national framework to achieve a COVID-safe economy and society. And it is our goal to move through all of these steps to achieve that COVID-safe economy in July of this year. In this plan, we walk before we run. We know we need to be careful to preserve our gains, but we also know that if we wish to reclaim the ground that we have lost, we cannot be too timid. There will be risks, there will be challenges, there will be outbreaks, there will be more cases, there will be setbacks. Not everything will go to plan. There will be inconsistencies. States will and must move at their own pace and will cut and paste out of this plan to suit their local circumstances. There will undoubtedly be some human error. No one is perfect. Everyone is doing their best. To think or expect otherwise, I think, would be very unrealistic. This is a complex and very uncertain environment. But we cannot allow our fear of going backwards from stopping us from going forwards. The Chief Medical Officer, Professor Murphy, will go into the plan in more detail. This is the plan for a COVID-safe Australia. 3 steps, moved out at the pace of states and territories, that will get us back where we need to be as quickly as we can. A plan that, according to Treasury, can see some 850,000 jobs restored in the months ahead. Step 1 will enable greater connection with friends and family, allowing gatherings of up to 10 people and 5 guests in your own home. Working from home if it works for you and your employer. That's a difference in emphasis, as I'm sure you've picked up. It will see children back in classrooms and in playgrounds in their communities. Golfers back on the green. Lap swimmers back in the pool. Boot camps back in the parks. Retail and small cafes and restaurants reopening. Interstate recreational travel starting again. It will see easing of restrictions for funerals with up to 30 attendees outdoors and 10 at weddings. Step 2 will allow larger sized gatherings of up to 20 people, including for venues such as cinemas and galleries, more retail openings on sector-based COVID-safe plans, organised community sport, and beauty parlours, and you'll be pleased to know bar classes open once again. Step 3, allowing gatherings of up to 100 people. This will become clearer as we move through the first 2 steps. So there will be more work to do on step 3. But most workers by then will be back in the workplace. Interstate travel will likely resume. Pubs and clubs with some restrictions will be open, and also possibly gaming venues. As I said, step 3, but also step 2, will get greater definition as we move through the success of step 1. And as I said, it is our aspiration, as agreed amongst premiers and chief ministers and myself, that in July we will have moved through these 3 steps across the country. The pace, though, will totally be up to the states and territories. They will be responsible for setting their own timetable and communicating that to their citizens and residents in their own states and territories. Premiers and chief ministers have asked me to stress that there should be no expectation of step 1 starting on day 1, unless they are indeed already there. Moving on these steps will take some preparation. It is also important to note that movement from one step to the next will depend on 3 criteria that we have always outlined and indeed has enabled us to move today a week earlier than we had planned. Those criteria, again, that the medical evidence suggests that further easing would not present an undue risk, that widespread testing is adequately identifying community transmission, and thirdly, public health actions are able to trace cases and trap local outbreaks. Testing, tracing, trapping, as they were saying in the Northern Territory recently. Downloading the COVID Safe app, which is now over 5.3 million, is the best way you can help us do this job, to keep you and your families safe. And I'd say that especially now, because for some time now, Australians have been kept at home. And they know who they've been seeing each and every day now for some time. But that's going to change in the weeks ahead. You will be seeing more people. You'll be connecting with more people. And so the COVID Safe app will be even more important to protect you and your family and your safety, and for those in your community, those you work with, those you come in contact with. So I would encourage you to continue to download the COVID Safe app. For industry and businesses, it's all about getting your COVID Safe plans in place for your workplaces and your premises. And Safe Work Australia has been doing some excellent work there, and I referred to that earlier this week with Nev Power and the Minister for Industrial Relations, Christian Porter. So, that's the plan for taking us forward. We'll be reviewing progress of our plan every 3 weeks and making any changes as we need to. I again want to thank all the premiers and chief ministers for the spirit in which they've engaged in this process over the last several months. I also want to thank our expert medical and economic advisors and, of course, Professor Murphy, who is here with us today, as always, and to you, Brendan, and to all of your team. Thank you for the excellent work that you have all done. I also want to thank my own team, from our own government, the Deputy Prime Minister, Michael McCormack, the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, and the Minister for Health, of course, Greg Hunt, and all of my colleagues for getting us to where we are today. But we've still got a long way to go. We've got a plan to get there, done the work to get there. Australians have done the work to get where we are, and I want to thank them most of all for enabling us to get to this point. A year ago, I made a promise to all Australians that we would work each and every day to keep our economy strong, to keep Australians safe, and to keep Australians together. We're keeping that promise to Australians. That's the fight we've been in. That's the fight we remain in. It's the fight we're winning, and it's the fight we'll continue to win together. Brendan.
Thank you, PM. I might just go through the PowerPoint. So we'll go to that first slide. And this is, again, you're familiar with this slide. It's showing where we are with our flat curve. You will see some little spike in numbers in the last few days. Most of that, 50% of the cases in the last week are related to 2 outbreaks, the Cedar Meats outbreak in Victoria and the Newmarch Aged Care outbreak in New South Wales. This is what we expect to see and what we will continue to see, and that's not such a concern if we're getting on top and managing these outbreaks as we have in those 2 cases. So, other than those 2 cases, we've got very low case numbers, but the virus is still there, it's still in our community, and that's why, despite our very good position, we've got to be very cautious and wary with our next steps. Some very good news on testing, where testing is really ramped up across the whole country. We've done more than 730,000 tests. We're just shy of 6,900 cases at the moment. 6 out of 8 states have had multiple days of 0 cases, but they all know that that doesn't mean the virus isn't still in their community, and all of us have to be very careful as we move forward. Next slide. This just demonstrates some of the measures we've taken over the period of this outbreak. You can see the progressive impact of the border measures and the various social distancing measures that we put in place, and how they have brought the curve and case numbers down. And now it's time to look at those measures. We're not looking at the border measures. As we have said on many occasions, 2/3 of the cases in Australia have been from returning travellers. We're not going to relax any of our border measures soon, and we're going to continue to quarantine all returning travellers, because this virus is certainly in a much worse position in many other countries from which our citizens are returning. I'll go to the next slide, thanks. So this is, as the Prime Minister outlined, our 3-step process. Step 1 is cautious. It's gentle. It's not doing too much at once, because we are in uncharted territories. There are not many countries in the world like Australia that is in a position to start gently relaxing measures with such low case numbers, and we don't want to lose the control we've got. We want to make sure that outbreaks that occur are managed and controlled. We also want to make sure that before we do anything, every Australian follows these measures. Everyone continues to practice that physical distancing all the time. Everyone maintains good hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene. Everybody stays home when they're unwell. no matter how mild your cold or your cough, stay home when you're unwell and please get a COVID test. That's the best way we will find these hidden cases of the virus in our community, is if every single person who has any respiratory symptoms gets a COVID test and stays home. No more heroics of coming to work with a cough and a cold and a sore throat. That's off the agenda for every Australian for the foreseeable future. Please. The COVID-safe plans for the workplaces are really important, as the Prime Minister said. Clearly also there's the health response. Prime Minister's already alluded to that, testing, tracking and responding to outbreaks. So in step one, it's essentially getting people in groups of 10 together, outdoors particularly, working at home if it's going all right for you and your employer, allowing 10 people in a one person per 4 square metre distance in small cafes and restaurants. We know that that will mean many cafes and restaurants won't be able to open, but many that are doing takeaway may well want to put up enough distant tables to start just gently serving 10 people at a time. Some libraries and community centres, again, with only small numbers of people. In step two, we're looking at larger gatherings of around 20. Potentially in some states, they may look in some venues at really good COVID-safe plans to go more than that. Opening a range of other things, such as gyms, indoor fitness, beauty therapy, cinemas, galleries and the like. Some interstate travel we think might reoccur in that stage. Step three is much more relaxed, and this, as the Prime Minister said, there's still a lot of work to be done on step three. There's still quite a bit of work to be done on step two. We have more certainty around the definition of step one, and each of the states and territories will be separately defining how and when they will implement that. But in step three, we're talking about opening up most of the economy, but again, in a COVID-safe way, with strict distancing, strict hygiene, all of those measures that we have to live with whilst this virus is with us in the community. Next slide. This just provides a little bit more detail and really gives a bit of a narrative around each of the steps. So very cautious early reopening in stage one. Step two, many more businesses and activities and venues opening again, but still with significant numbers controlled. And step three, a much more broader opening, but again in that principle of good distancing and good hygiene. And in step three, we're hopeful that there will be more travel around the country and we might start to get some domestic tourism again. But step one, well defined. Step two, a bit more work to be done, and step three, still a lot of discussion to be had before we can well define that properly. Next slide. So what are we asking the community to do? Keep those personal responsibilities. I know I've said it already today, but please keep that distancing. We could lose the battle that we've won so well so far. You only have to look at the nightly news and see what's happening in really good countries with good health systems like Australia, where they let this virus get out of control, unfortunately. We have managed, we've been lucky to control this virus, and we want to keep that control. So while we relax some of these measures cautiously, every Australian has to do their bit. Every Australian has to do the things that I've said already about distancing and good health and staying at home when well. We'll continue to do all of the things as a public health response, and we will make sure that if we find outbreaks, as we surely will, we'll get on top of them and control them. If we all do the right thing together, we can get through the next few months and gradually get a COVID-safe normal life again.